one of the biggest crises for Europe with the pandemic and the economic crisis that is following it. We are there with the Horizon Europe program also to address this crisis. Obviously, research and innovation will be key to get out of the sanitary issue with vaccines, treatments, diagnostics, and we've invested already with Horizon 2020 this year more than €1 billion in research in those areas with the successes that you've heard recently. But we want to invest also in the rebuilding of Europe in a different shape. We want to be able to transform Europe into a green continent with climate neutrality planned for 2050, into a digital continent where we would have world leadership. And for this twin transition, we need to invest now in research and innovation. We will not deliver on climate neutrality by 2050 with the current technologies that we have. So we need to invest now in breakthrough technologies and innovations that will deliver on that overarching objective. Horizon Europe is going to be the 9th framework program for research and innovation. It's the biggest ever, and it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, research program in the world. It is representing quite an increase in budget compared to Horizon 2020, which is remarkable considering the current budget constraints we are facing. And which is even more so the case if we take into account the fact that Horizon 2020 was for 28 member states and we have now one less and a big one. We are also trying to address the needs of citizens, societal challenges through this program. So it is representing an evolution, but quite a significant evolution compared to Horizon 2020 and its predecessors. We will be much more focused on impact, trying to see what are the challenges we're addressing, what are the outcome of the research and innovation that we are looking for, and how we can program our Horizon Europe program over the 7 years from that perspective. With the European Green Deal in particular, we have committed to spend at least 35% of the investment in research and innovation into research and innovation in this area. We will also try to plug in Horizon Europe better into the overall funding instruments landscape that we have at European level, with synergies being developed with the regional and structural funds, but also with the Common Agricultural Policy, with the SME program, with Digital Europe program, Connect Europe facility, etc., so that the results of the research can be deployed and delivered on the ground. We are trying also to plug in Horizon Europe much more into the Commission priorities, and those are the ones that I've mentioned. Of course, addressing the sanitary crisis, improving our resilience, but also rebuilding Europe and transforming it into a green and digital continent. To do that, we have developed for the first time a strategic plan for the program. This is quite a novelty because up to now we had calls for proposals that were a bit bottom-up exercises where we were consulting broadly and issuing those calls for proposals without having, as we want to develop now, a strategic approach to it. The strategic plan is taking those three priorities: resilience and health crisis, digital transformation, green transformation, and translating those into strategic orientations for Horizon Europe, which will guide us for the objectives that will be fixed for each work program along the first half of the programming period, so along 2021-2024. We have basically almost finalized this strategic plan. That was quite an endeavor also to include not only all services and stakeholders, but also citizens in that exercise. It was a co-creation and co-design process, and we hope to be adopting Horizon Europe's strategic plan by the end of the year or at the very beginning of 2021. I say we hope because, of course, it's depending on the overall agreement on the MFF. You currently know about the stalemate at the Council and the adoption of Horizon Europe as a regulation. Once this is adopted, this will be translated into work programs for Horizon Europe, which we hope to have adopted for the main work program by mid-April, which would enable us to launch the first calls for proposals in April, meaning that basically there would be virtually no gap between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, since we are currently in the midst of the Green Deal call, which is the last call of Horizon 2020, launched in September with a deadline in January. So we will be selecting the projects in the next few months over the first trimester. That's about the process and the timing and the strategic orientations for Horizon Europe. Maybe a few other highlights I would like to give on our program. One is the missions. I told you that we are trying to have a much more impact-oriented approach, setting our objectives. One of the features of the new program in that context is what we call the missions. There will be 5 missions. They are inspired by the concept of the Apollo 11 mission in the 60s, where the Americans decided that they wanted to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade. So this is exactly what we are trying to do, not to land a man on the moon, but to fix objectives that speak to the citizens, that are ambitious, time limited, and that would mobilize research and innovation across a very large spectrum of areas and domains, and also mobilize funding and policies beyond research and innovation so that we can deploy and implement the results of the research and actually achieve the objectives. Those 5 missions were designed with citizens. And here I'm not talking about the usual consultation process that we have when we do any new regulation or action in the Commission, but really sitting with citizens across Europe from the beginning to assess with them what are their main societal challenges that could be addressed, in particular through investment in research and innovation. And we identified with them 5 missions, 1 on cancer, and 4 more related to the green transformation with climate adaptation, 100 climate neutral cities, being the 3rd mission by 2030, cleaning our soils for healthy soils and food, and addressing oceans. Those 5 missions will be implemented through a portfolio approach with, again, as I said, a large array of domains being covered in research and innovation, and links being done with funding from other EU programs and also funding from national and local authorities in order to deliver on the very important investment that is needed to achieve those objectives. Another important area for Horizon Europe is the partnerships. This is not new. We've had partnerships. We are having partnerships now under Horizon 2020, but we are streamlining them quite significantly. We have currently 120 partnerships, the objectives of which is to have private and public partners joining together to co-fund or co-program research and innovation, and to deliver on specific challenges where we want to leverage money from the private and other public authorities beyond EU funding. We will now have under Horizon Europe 49 partnerships, so quite less, also less types of partnerships, and a more, let's say, effective, we hope, and efficient approach to their organization. Perhaps a few words also on international cooperation, which remains high on our agenda. Horizon and its predecessors, the framework programs have always been known for being open to the world, and that's exactly what we want to continue with Horizon Europe, with an openness for collaborative research and innovation projects with partners from the neighborhood, from third countries, and regions in strategic areas of mutual benefit. We are also going to fund international mobility and cooperation in frontier research with our partners, and continue to associate countries to Horizon in Europe and the neighborhood. We are also looking at associating, and that is a novelty, countries that are like-minded and advanced in research and innovation, and where there could be a mutual benefit stemming from that association, such as, I don't know, Canada, Japan, Australia, and other such countries. There is also a provision in Horizon which ensures that, of course, on very sensitive projects, we would be able to exclude partners controlled by third countries. Considering your specific interest, I would like to expand a little bit also on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions and on the European Research Council. On Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, this is an instrument that is fundamental for the circulation of brains in Europe, for the successful development of the European research area. We have seen throughout the COVID crisis that it is even more important than ever to rely on the union's skills and the human capital that we have in research and innovation to tackle the upcoming challenges. We've seen also that, of course, the COVID crisis is not helping mobility. So we want to make sure that MSCA, Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, will be reinforced and maintained as the main instrument at union level to ensure this circulation of skills and human capital, to boost scientific excellence, jobs, growth, economic development, and this will be an area we will be discussing also in the context of the European research area. You know that we've issued at the end of September a communication to revamp the European research area and give it more weight in the future, so that it's not only through Horizon, but also through the alignment of the policies and programs at various European levels that we can maximize our impact, the impact of the research investments that we are doing throughout Europe. On the European Research Council, well, this has become a world gem, I would say, a model that is being envied by our partners, a true game changer in European research policy. Most of our Nobel Prizes have been funded by the European research policy, but it's, of course, funding many, many more researchers across the Union. We want to ensure that this continues to be funded well under the new Horizon Europe program. Here also, we've seen that ERC projects can make important contributions, including to address the current pandemic. And we are going to invest further in this area so that they can address societal challenges, new technologies, disruptive research that are needed to fuel the green and digital transitions. Perhaps a few words also on widening participation and strengthening the European research area. There we will follow the 4 objectives of the new European research area communication I mentioned a bit earlier, which are prioritizing investment and reform, improving access to excellence, and translating research and innovation results into economic value, as well as deepening the European research area and mainstreaming open science, gender equality, citizen engagement, and strengthening research careers. The budget for widening is increasing quite significantly under Horizon Europe. This was a priority for the Parliament in particular, and the objective is really to bring to the best levels of excellence all member states, including those that are lagging behind. And in our European Research Area communication, we're inviting member states, in particular the ones that are investing less than others, in European research and innovation to reinforce their effort there, including their public effort through a number of targets that we have set and that we have discussed last week with the research ministers in an informal meeting that took place on the 27th on Friday, and where this communication has been very broadly welcomed by all member states. We will also try in the field of higher education to develop further synergies between Horizon Europe and Erasmus. This is going to be facilitated internally by the fact that we now have under the von der Leyen Commission a single commissioner covering in her portfolio both Erasmus and Horizon. So we are working together to ensure that alliance between European universities and investment into researchers and future researchers is being reinforced, and that both programs will contribute to that. I think I will perhaps leave it there for my overall presentation. It's been quite detailed already. I saw quite a lot of questions coming through the chat box, but I must say that I was concentrating in speaking to you, and I couldn't follow them. So hopefully the moderator can bring them back to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julien, for this insightful presentation. It definitely clarified some of my questions, but now we will have some time for the Q&A session, and I would like to ask everybody to type in their questions in the chat so that our chat facilitator, Jason Cheng, will be able to collect them and ask it to Mr. Guerrier himself. But before we collect them, I would like to ask you, Julien, so we know that the new Horizon Europe will be made more simplified and more user-friendly in many aspects. Can you tell us how these changes and new features that you just presented will affect the proposal development, specifically maybe in the evaluation or proposal templates and reporting?
Yes. Indeed. Well, as you know, and as you've said in your kind introduction, until March last year, I was actually director of one of the executive agencies that is implementing the program. So I was in direct contact with the beneficiaries and the applicants, and I'm very much aware and conscious of the importance of simplifying our processes, of improving the feedback to applicants. So we are going to continue the efforts under Horizon Europe to have, where appropriate, a two-stage approach in the applications, to use as much as possible what we call the simplified cost options with lump sums, with simplified reporting obligations. We are working also with my colleagues in my directorate on simplifying and making the reporting template more impact-oriented. I've insisted a lot on this impact orientation. We would like to reduce the number of reporting obligations and to really focus on what we absolutely need in order to measure, monitor the impact of the projects. And what cannot be obtained through other means than reporting obligations. So we are not there yet, so we are still working on it. But again, there will be changes in the reporting obligations, but the changes are meant to simplify the work of beneficiaries and also to focus more on the impact of their projects rather than just the output that is expected from the projects. We have developed those key impact pathways, which are a set of indicators to capture and communicate the impact of the projects and of the program. Our objective is also to be able to build that narrative on the impact of the program as we go along and as we are getting results and information from the projects, and not just through the intermediary and final evaluations that we do every time, but that come quite later in the process. What can I say to you in that context? Well, in the proposal, we will ask applicants to describe the specific impact expected from their projects and how those would contribute to the expected outcomes set out in the work program topic over the medium term, as well as the wider expected impact set out over the longer term. We will also be able to assess the likely scale and significance of that contribution of the project, and to measure how the project is maximizing its impact through dissemination, exploitation, and communication measures. We will also ask applicants to identify individual project researchers so that we can better understand and capture the impact of the program also on the ground. Yes, that's what I can say now, but again, the reporting template is still work in progress.
Thank you very much. It is from the resources that I read that are open to public, one of the big innovations that I found is that the expected income impact will be more clearly specified at the level of the call, while the applicants will be able to choose multiple pathways to achieve this.
Exactly. We want to focus really on the impact, the outcome of the research, and be as little prescriptive as possible on the pathways to get there, so that researchers have more leeway to actually decide on how to conduct their research to maximize the impact.
Now, I also know that the European Commission wants to ensure the continuation of the project and its impact, even after the official funding and the project duration is over. So that is why we are hearing also about the Horizon Results platform and the Horizon Results Booster. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, the idea is that we need to use the research of the results of the research after the end of the project. We need to disseminate it. We need to have as much open science as possible, and to give access to researchers and innovators across Europe to those results. So we're investing into this booster, into also identifying what are the portfolios of projects that can be linked with one another, and that could be put in contact in order to further invest in subsequent research in the future.
And maybe last question, thank you from us. We've read that the European Commission also wants to showcase more guidance and support to applicants on dissemination and exploitation. How will this work exactly, the support?
Yes, well, we will have guidance for applicants and beneficiaries also on the dissemination and exploitation, as well as a platform that will support them in using all the tools that we're developing to maximize the use of the results of their research.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Jason Cheng, our chat facilitator that was collecting the questions from our participants, to unmute himself and to present the questions.
Thank you, Katerina. So I have a question here from Amparo, and basically the question is, has there been progress in the dialogue that has been opened with Latin America to strengthen research cooperation with the region?
Yes, well, we are, as I told you, trying to open up the program very broadly. It is already very broadly open. Basically, any partner from any country can participate under certain conditions on a project basis. We are also opening the program on a program basis to our associated partners. I must say that a lot of work is being done, of course, with our associated partners now to determine the conditions of their association. So that's mainly European countries and neighborhood countries, and potentially advanced countries that are like-minded. We are also focusing on some developing countries, in particular Africa. So Latin America hasn't been very much, how should I say, at the top of priorities in our contacts so far, but it is, as any other region in the world, a region where we are in touch with the research institutes there, and where we are trying to facilitate their participation in the projects that are relevant to them.
Perfect, thank you. So I think just to also continue maybe with the whole international theme. So there has been a few questions where it's asking more focus on the UK. So has there been any movement on the UK's position to join the program? And if not, what would be the likely length of time to apply as an associate partner or a third country?
Well, for the time being, of course, you know that we're in the transition situation governed by the terms of the withdrawal agreement. So the UK is still part of Horizon 2020 until the end of this month. And entities from the UK are still eligible to participate and receive funding up until the end of the duration of the projects that are launched up to the end of the current program. Now, for the association into Horizon Europe, there is an obvious interest on both sides to associate the UK to Horizon Europe. I mean, we've been so much linked with each other in terms of research networks, innovation networks over the past decades. And we are so close geographically and culturally that it is obviously a mutual interest. So we've been negotiating with the UK as part of the negotiation of the future agreement to govern our relations with that new third countries, to associate them to Horizon Europe. This is advancing, but of course it is subject to the overall agreement. So I am confident that if there is a deal in the next few days or weeks with the UK as a whole on the overall agreement, it will include the conditions to have them associated to Horizon Europe, where they have expressed a strong interest to be there.
Okay, thank you. And so I think early on in the chat, basically some attendees had maybe comments, but maybe we could also address them to understand your thoughts a bit more. So moving on from the whole international theme, there were some comments about maybe you could give advice on a human resource coordination. Maybe, sorry, did I freeze? But basically, if you could give some comments on human resources in terms of coordination between partners, and what would be your advice on that?
Yes, I don't know exactly what you would be expecting from me on that subject.
So basically, it's more on aligning partners between in terms of project ideas, and how would you align them? What is your advice that would help in the support of a better project proposal?
Well, I'm not sure I get the question. if it's concerning the joint preparation of project proposals between the various partners. I mean, Katarina mentioned at the beginning that I was quite some time ago director or general manager of the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, and in that context, we also applied for FP7 grants and coordinated projects. So it is important, of course, to start early, to find the right partners and to establish a network and ensure that human resources skills, competencies, or profiles are complementary between the various partners, and that they work well together from the development of the application to then ensure that well, they have a solid, let's say, portfolio of skills to win the selection, or to go through the selection and be selected. But also then to implement effectively the project. I'm not sure if I've replied to your question, because it was not very specific, and I'm not sure I got the point.
No, it was good because it was really just trying to clarify partnerships, but maybe there's also another question in the chat in terms of the involvement of companies or maybe the private sector in our project. So what would be your advice on that in involving this sector? Well,
for the partnerships, those are partnerships that are set at the beginning of the period. So they are being set up now, the 49 that I've mentioned. There may be other waves of partnerships in the next few years, in the second half of the program. Those partnerships include very often private partners. It can be individual companies, it can be association of enterprises, and that's of course very important in order to ensure that all the research skills that are necessary and that are concerned by the theme of the partnerships, be it, I don't know, on artificial intelligence, on high performance computing, on medical initiatives, are being gathered around the table, and that they co-invest with us into research in this area. For the more general collaborative projects, well, it depends very much on the topic, but of course, very often the participation of private partners is welcomed and encouraged. We are also trying to support, as we've always done throughout the framework programs, the participation of SMEs in collaborative projects.
Thank you very much, Julien. I would also like to address one comment. One of the biggest challenges that some of our academic members see is that they would like to see better feedback from the evaluations and from the European Commission's information and resources. This will be actually addressed because the participants will be able to reply to the feedback of the European Commission and their evaluators. Is that correct? Could you specify this a bit more?
Yes, well, it's always been something that that we've been investing into to have a quick, as complete as possible, and as standardized also as possible feedback to the applicants, so that they can know why they were selected or not selected, and of course this has to be to a certain extent standardized, and is sometimes frustrating for applicants. Because we need to treat everybody in the same way. We need to be fast enough, so it's a balance between being fast and being specific, and we need also to offer the same level of information and of appeal and recourse procedures to all the participants. We are going to do a pilot to test blind evaluations in this context. And this will be part of the first work program of Horizon Europe. This is also something that we believe will improve or at least will enable us to double check and hopefully to confirm that there is no bias in the proposal evaluation system, and that knowing or not knowing who is applying and whether they are well-known organizations in countries with better performing research and innovation systems has an impact on the selection. So those blind evaluations will be a way to remove any real or perceived effect of such biases, which we believe don't exist, but which we will be able then to better assess. The pilot should enable us to identify those whether the new procedure, this blind evaluation, creates any legal or operational difficulties, and how we can overcome them without jeopardizing the smooth running of the evaluation process. So that's also something that should enable us to develop further the feedback and to reassure applicants about the absolute unbiased approach of the evaluation system.
Mm-hmm. We also have a question in this topic, if there is going to be more emphasis on second stage applications, so that these projects will have a less chance to not put more resources in what needed. I've also read that they will be simplified, and that the project proposals or there will be limitation of the word counting or the page counting in the paper proposals, that this might be just 50 when it was 70 in Horizon 2020. Could you give us your opinion on this?
Yes, on so sorry, could you repeat the last part of the question, because I saw a question in the chat that was distracting my attention.
So the question is, will there be more emphasis on the second stage applications?
Yes. Well, I did implement two-stage applications in the agency, in the SME agency, both in Horizon Europe and in other programs. And I must say that my experience there was very positive. It's a system whereby you can, well, you know it well, but you can present or do less efforts, let's say, to present a concept paper on your proposal, and only if you are pre-selected in that first phase do you have to write a full-fledged proposal. We shouldn't, I mean, when we count the number of pages, of course, the first proposal is much shorter than the full-fledged proposal. It still requires quite an effort to put into the thinking and the concept of the proposal. So it may be much shorter, but in terms of time to reflect and to prepare, it's shorter, but not that much shorter. Nevertheless, I do believe that it has been very successful, and that we should consider a two-stage approach more often in the course. It's not appropriate for all calls, and the issue we are now struggling with is to try to identify which calls should go to a two-stage approach and which calls should remain in a one-stage approach. And we want to develop some kind of internal guidance on that, and see how to maximize the benefits by doing two-stage approaches where it has most effectiveness. So that's what we are working with. But yes, to reply to your question, I do believe that it has been successful where we have implemented it in the past, and that we should increase its use, which doesn't mean generalize its use. I saw also in passing a question in the chat box on the blended investment and the European Innovation Council, which I was running in the SME agency for the pilot until last year. There we have a two-stage approach, if you want. We do a selection of the projects with panels that include innovators, entrepreneurs, academics, and investors, and they do assess the entirety of the project, both the grant part and the blended investment, if you want, into the capital. But then, of course, you have for that second part also a due diligence that is being done by a specific purpose vehicle that has been set up by the EIB group for that.
Thank you very much. So we've heard also that the European Commission confirmed another additional 4 billion added to the Horizon Europe budget. But there are still few points that remain to be negotiated at this point of time, and that is the question of synergies and some other questions. Can we then anticipate the program to start on time in January? And I know that you already also mentioned in the beginning of your presentation, when can we expect the publishing of the first calls, and if there will be more reports and official communication on Horizon Europe. But I've seen this question also in the chat, so you could maybe even repeat this. Thank you.
Yes. Well, in terms of sequencing, it's quite simple. First, we need an agreement on the MFF. You've mentioned the 4 additional billions. They are part of this pre-agreement between the Council and the Parliament. But as you know, there are 2 member states that are blocking the whole deal on the basis of the provisions on the rule of law. So that's the first step. The second step will be to adopt the Horizon Europe regulation. And to do that, we need to finalize the negotiation between the Council and the Parliament on a very few issues, synergies being one. I would say the most important will be on the budget distribution within Horizon Europe, and this budget distribution will have to integrate the 4 additional billion that are part of this overall deal between the Parliament and the Council. So budget allocation of those 4 billions and of the overall budget for Horizon Europe within each cluster and pillar will be a subject for the negotiation. Now, I have no more clue than you do by following the news on when this will be unblocked, but if there is an MFF deal, I do believe that we are almost there for the Horizon Europe agreement. And we've done our internal homework on the strategic plan, which is the 3rd step, and on the work program, which is the 4th and last step. So as soon as the MFF deal is unblocked, I do believe that we can agree relatively quickly in a few months, a couple of months, on Horizon Europe regulation. And in parallel, we can, as soon as Horizon Europe is adopted, and adopt the strategic plan and the work program dans la foulée, I would say. So our plan to adopt the work program in the main work program, because there are other parts like ERC, EIT, EIC that are even basically ready to be adopted as soon as this is all done. The main work program is adoptable mid-April. Now, if there is a delay in the MFF deal, this may, of course, have an impact on the rest. But we are ready to go internally. We've done our work, and we should be able to adopt that mid-April. It's challenging, but it's doable.
Perfect. Thank you very much for this. Well, we have some time for any 1 or 2 additional questions. So if anybody has some last minute questions, you can type it in the chat. And meanwhile, maybe because one of the biggest innovations and one of the newest features is the missions that you presented. And I know that they were discussed, and there was a survey also at the European Research and Innovation Days this year. So you've mentioned that they were already selected, and there has been the final selections, and you mentioned how you defined the missions in the first place. But can you tell us a bit more how the missions will be achieved, and how will they be integrated into the second pillar, and if there will be any implications with the other pillars as well, the missions?
Thank you. Yes, the missions were developed, as I said, in a very co-creative and co-design process with citizens across Europe by experts that were and high-level people that were recruited in mission boards, independent of the Commission. Those mission boards presented their proposals at the Research and Innovation Days at the end of September. So now the Commission has received those proposals. They are very ambitious, and we are currently studying them. They will be listed, the 5 of them, in the strategic plan. So that's the way they were selected, and they will be announced. But their implementation will be done in 2 phases. There will be a first phase for the next 6 to 12 months, where we will develop in the Commission implementation plans for those missions. And those implementation plans will be there to see what can we really realistically take on board and achieve in the reports that were submitted to us by the mission boards through Horizon and the research and innovation funding, but also through other MFF programs, other EU policies, and support from member states and local authorities. Those missions, as I've described them to you, are extremely broad and ambitious and will require huge funding in Horizon, but also outside of Horizon. As far as Horizon is concerned, the budget that is earmarked by the co-legislator is up to 10% of the budget of Pillar 2, so it will be limited to Pillar 2 within the first 3 years of the program. That represents quite a lot of money already. In the first phase that I've described, 6 to 12 months to develop the implementation plans, we will have a few specific actions to support and prepare the ground for the launch of the missions, but that will be very limited in the work program. There will be a specific part for missions in the work program for that. And then once those implementation plans are finalized, assessed and approved by the Commission, then the missions will be properly launched, full-fledged, and we will amend the work program at that time in the course of 2021 in order to invest in research and innovation for those missions. So that will be beefing up quite significantly because it's up to 10% of the budget of Pillar 2, the specific part of the work program that is dedicated to missions in Horizon Europe. And in parallel, other EU funding instruments and policies will be mobilized to deliver on those missions.
Thank you very much for these clarifying responses. I hope we answered most of the questions from the audience, but I am mindful of the time and afraid that our webinar is coming to an end now. So first of all, I would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Julien Guerrier, for his time and dedication. Thank you very much. And secondly, thank you all our participants for taking the time to being here for the launch of our ABIS webinar series. If you also liked today's webinar, please register also for the webinar that we will be having next week on Monday, December the 7th, with Anita Tregner-Mlinaric. She's the senior consultant at Meta Group, and she will talk more deeply on the fundamentals of a successful project proposal. You can find the link to register in the chat, so don't forget on that. We will stay in touch with all of you to bring you up to speed to any further developments on Horizon Europe. We are also recording this session, so you will have exclusive access to that. And we will also create toolkits with the reporting and the minutes from what has been said today. So thank you again, and we hope to seeing you soon. We will close now the webinar. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.